Next topic is a deep one for me, so buckle up and hang on. I opened last week's podcast by saying Stephen A. Smith was more of a brother to me than my actual brother ever was. That's the truth. So allow me to share a little about that actual brother named Rick Bayless. Born 2 years after me, I was the oldest. We had a sister named Luann. She died a couple of years ago of breast cancer. May she rest in peace. 7 years younger than me. So my relationship with my little brother, Ricky, as he was called in those days, was simply the strangest development that ever happened in my life. Because from the start, we never really had any relationship. I doubt you can find two brothers as dramatically different as we were. And our parents both had their problems. They weren't what you would call loving parents. My mother really didn't want to have children, just had them because her mother pressured her to. So neither of our parents ever put any pressure on us to love each other because we were brothers. So from the start, I just loved sports. I don't know why, I don't know how. My whole life was sports, watching, playing sports. I was always pretty good at playing sports. And my little brother had absolutely zero interest in anything sports. So we couldn't play catch in the backyard because it's the last thing he wanted to do. And I accepted that. But the irony here was that he wasn't the weirdo. I was. I was the family weirdo because I was the only one in my extended family who didn't care about cooking. Everybody cooked. Everybody cooked. My father got up at 4 a.m., which actually seems pretty late to me, but he got up at 4 a.m. every single morning to go cook the ribs, the meat, whatever he cooked, mostly ribs, at this little hole-in-the-wall barbecue place, a 35 or 40-minute drive all the way across Oklahoma City to the south side, called the Hickory House. He forced me to work at the Hickory House every summer day, every holiday until I was 17 years of age, and I despised it. I did not want to cook. I did not want to prepare food, so I got reduced to sweeping what was called the bullpen, the trash can area. It was just disgusting. I had to wipe down tables during the lunch rush and sometimes the dinner rush. I hated it. I nearly cut my finger off trying to cut a green pepper with a butcher knife because I hated it. If there was anything good about it, it did teach me the value of hard work because my dad was a grinder. I grind now. I know what an honest day's work feels like, and it benefits me to this day. My dad never ever took a sick day, and I'm going to knock on some wood here. I haven't and don't plan to, thank you God. Yet my father gravitated to my little brother Ricky because right from the start, he gravitated to cooking at the Hickory House. Not only did he grow to be on fire with it, but he showed immediately at 4, 5, 6 years of age, talent for cooking. My father had next to no interest in my sports. In fact, repeatedly telling me that I was just wasting my time. So the point is, my brother and I never really had anything to talk about. We had nothing in common. My brother was from the start artistic. Remember, our parents, I'm not even sure they got through high school. And here's my little brother, artistic. He liked to paint. He liked to make ceramics. He liked to act in school plays. I was more inward, more introverted, and weirdly, I became a voracious reader. I sort of escaped from my home life by reading. I read everything, every sports biography, but I read all the classics, Robinson Crusoe, Treasure Island. Then I fell into falling in love with all the old movies, The Wizard of Oz, Gone with the Wind, Christmas Carol, all the classics, analyzing them, figuring someday I'm going to write movies, I'm going to write books. But my brother was more avant-garde, more off-Broadway, and we couldn't even connect on any sort of literary level. We just had zero common ground. So it got so bad for my little brother that when my jock friends would come over, they did think he was a little bit of a weirdo. And he felt that, and there's never anything blatant, never any open verbal abuse. But my brother didn't love that, hated them, hated my life. And then, of course, all the way up through grade school, into high school, I was often the best athlete, especially in grade school, and I was often the best student in my class because I was just an overachiever. I just outwork everyone, and ended up finishing second in my graduating class of 681 in high school. What do you call it? Salutatorian. Thanks to my B I got in driver's ed because they wouldn't give A's. That cost me. The woman who won it, just a girl at that point, she didn't take driver's ed. So my little brother Ricky had to come after me at every level. Sometimes would have the same teachers I had had, and of course they would immediately say, "Oh, you're Skip's brother," which put more pressure on him to live up. Same for my little sister, 7 years younger, and the resentment built among both of them, my brother and my sister. And meanwhile, my father was falling deeper and deeper into the bottle as he felt greater and greater pressure to provide because that restaurant came and mostly went. Many nights I thought they were going to have to close it, so our finances came and often went. My father tried rehab 2 or 3 different times and failed miserably each time. He left us when I was 17 and ran off with one of my mom's best friends named Judy, who lived down the block, which sent my mother deeper and deeper into the bottle. So we had double alcoholic issues. And all the way up through high school, I rarely spent a Friday or a Saturday night at home just to stay away from my father and these problems. I just stayed at friends' houses constantly. I had a steady girlfriend, became my first wife, named Liz, starting in 9th grade, and her parents loved me and I loved them as sort of my substitute parents. So I went to her house as soon as I could drive. I went to her house almost every single weeknight to study and just hang out. My brother and I never discussed any of this. We just drifted further and further apart because I frankly, I rarely saw him. And the irony of that is that we shared a bedroom all the way up until I was 14. I was top bunk, he was bottom. Rarely talked, rarely saw each other except when we were going to sleep, if in fact I was there. So, as fate would have it, into my senior year, I won a full scholarship to Vanderbilt University, and I was finally free. I had my way out. I'll be the first to admit I left my brother and my sister in an all-time mess. I don't think they ever forgave me for that, and I do not blame either one of them. They bonded through all the crises with my mother. They became very close, and I get that. The truth was, I never really knew either one of my brother or my sister because our household was so completely, sadly, dysfunctional. So I left, and I was driven to survive and succeed as the oldest, and I fought my way up that ladder. I became a star writer at the Miami Herald right out of Vanderbilt, and then moved out here, became a star writer at the LA Times. And I became the lead columnist at the Dallas Morning News at age 25. Then came radio, then came television. And meanwhile, guess what my little brother Ricky was up to? He became Rick Bayless, one of America's most famous and successful chefs. Who knew? Hickory House. He wound up, when my mother failed to be able to operate the Hickory House in the wake of my father, he took her ancient, decrepit equipment and U-hauled it up to Chicago and somehow opened a little restaurant called Frontera Grill that took off. He's had his own national TV shows. Every time I look up, he's on Good Morning America. He's written countless bestsellers, cookbooks, specialty Mexican cuisine. He has won the most prestigious awards for a chef and a restaurant, the James Beard Awards, for both of those. This is impossibly great. Now his most famous restaurant is called Topolobampo. It is Obama's favorite restaurant. So when Obama was first elected, he asked my brother, little Ricky, to be the White House chef. By then, my brother was running 4 or 5 different restaurants, and as our father always told us, if you're not there, they will fail. There's no absentee owning a restaurant. As my father always said, they'll steal from you, they'll steal you blind. And they did when my father wasn't there. According to my mother, because I didn't speak to my brother at that point, my brother was very honored, but had to decline to be able to keep his restaurants going. So he declined Obama's invitation to be the White House chef. I cannot express to you, I can't express to you strongly enough how proud I am of my brother I don't know. I'm so proud of him because I know what he had to overcome to get where he got. I know that because I also lived it. I know how he had to, even more than I had to, lift himself up out of the you-know-what that he lived in with my mother, that mess that I left him in. To rise out of that, the mess I left him in, all the way to the top of his profession. It's impossibly great. I did see my brother at my mother's funeral a few years back. We spoke. I can't remember a single word we said, but we spoke. We were fine. It was civil. There's no animosity that I'm aware of. But we haven't spoken since. And honestly, I don't lose any sleep over that. This is simply the way it was from the very, very start. As soon as he was 3 or 4 and I was 5 or 6, there was no relationship at all. But occasionally I sit back and I think about how billion to one incredible it is that my brother and I came out of that little 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom house on 43rd Street in Oklahoma City. We shared a bedroom for 14 years. I'll take the top, you take the bottom. And somehow we both rose out of all that to some national prominence. I love my little brother, Ricky, even if I don't really know him. I hope you enjoyed that video. You ready for more? Make sure you click that subscribe button for all the exclusive content from the Skip Bayless Show. And don't forget to check out the full episode of the show wherever you get your podcasts by clicking the link in the description.